Hi, my name is Amanda Panacea, and you're listening to the Healer Revolution podcast. This is a community for self-healers, biohackers, practitioners, and any other helping professionals. You're in the right place if you're seeking conversations about how pain becomes passion, the connection between physical, energetic, mental, and our spiritual self, finding your body's ancient wisdom, the latest biohacking technologies, clinical research, and if you just want to nerd out about complex biochemistry and quantum physics. But this is also for entrepreneurs who seek infinite abundance and a supportive community. So pour a cup of King coffee or Sisters tea and let's join the revolution. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Healer Revolution podcast. I am your host, Amanda Panacea, and today is a solo podcast on one of my most requested topics in my DMs, how to heal from topical steroid withdrawal or steroid addiction, and what did I do to heal? And there's a big rift in this community between people who want to do things to actively heal versus other people who say all that you need is time. And I'm here to say that time is not your friend when you're in topical steroid withdrawal. It is pure suffering 100% of your waking hours and when you're asleep. For me personally, sleeping was actually the most traumatic time period. And you can do actually a lot of things to help limit your suffering and to heal quicker. And if you don't want to do any other types of medication, totally fine. You do not have to. However, in the most stressful and horrific time periods in the beginning months, and really the first 6 to 9 months, I did utilize some medications, not in the realm of things that have addictions to them like steroids, but because you have to make a decision about what you can handle and your finances, with topical steroid withdrawal, unless you're working completely from home on a phone and no one has to see you, you'll most likely have to quit your job and be fully taken care of by someone. For me, I had my boyfriend who was taking care of me and doing all of the cooking and the housework and going on my errands because I couldn't leave the house. So there will come a time where you have to evaluate your own mental health, your own finances, and determine if you do want to go down the path of medications or not. Now, not all medications are horrible with this crazy withdrawal like topical steroids or oral steroids. Like in my case, I went through withdrawal from only 12 days of prednisone. And I know that sounds like a really short period of time. I also thought that was a very short period of time. I did not expect to go into full-blown what was definitely topical steroid withdrawal, even though I was not using any topicals, because I actually knew about topical steroid withdrawal and knew not to use topical steroids. But I believe because I was already dealing with and diagnosed with Mast Cell Activation Syndrome, that my adrenals, my nervous system, my HPA axis was just so tanked and so just well, we've got some synthetic cortisol, great, because we are effing exhausted. So we're just gonna quit. So what I think happened is the short period of time, because I was already so stressed and dealing with mast cell activation, is why that caused this horrific withdrawal for me. Now, I do know people who took prednisone, life-saving time periods. If you're having sometimes a crazy reaction to something, or if you're in the hospital, they're just going to pump you full of antibiotics and steroids to help you get through whatever it is before they have time to diagnose you so that you survive. And I joke now with my partner, unless I am actively dying, you have to tell doctors or the hospital, if I'm ever sent to the hospital, that I am allergic to steroids, because they will just blindly give that to you oftentimes without your consent to save your life. And unless it's actually a life-saving situation, I told my boyfriend, please make sure they're aware that I have an allergy, because doctors, nurses, they understand allergy, but they don't always listen when you say, I don't want to take steroids because I went through this. And they're like, well, are you allergic? I worked in hospitals, so hint, say that you're allergic. Put it on your medication allergy list. But basically saying not everyone that takes steroids, I've known people that have taken steroids for autoimmune conditions for months to years, and they didn't go through steroid withdrawal. Now, were they better off in their autoimmune condition? You know, you'll have to talk to each person individually. I don't personally think that that is a root cause approach, obviously. But again, in a life-threatening situation, you have to kind of make a decision, what pros and cons of each decision. So back to when you're starting to go through steroid withdrawal. Now, because steroids are synthetic cortisol, and your body, if it goes into a life-threatening condition called adrenal insufficiency, which can happen after a majorly stressful event, like, for example, giving birth, or if you develop Addison's disease. Now, an adrenal insufficiency, an adrenal crisis can be life-threatening. So if you have been on steroids for most of your life, or taken prednisone for long periods of time, the adrenal glands will not be producing enough cortisol if you were to say stop cold turkey. So this is also something that people in the community say, like, which one should I do? Should I taper, or should I just go cold turkey? And I would definitely say to taper, and to make sure that you have a very good amount of adrenal gland support and cortisol support, because the symptoms of this rebound from stopping such a cold turkey and having not enough cortisol can significantly affect your electrolytes, sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium, all are which vital for our blood pressure and blood sugar and nervous system function and cellular function. So you can go into having this very, very low blood pressure and feeling very dizzy if your body does not have the cortisol to help regulate these systems. The adrenals also make a hormone called aldosterone, which regulates sodium in the sodium balance in the body, which can affect potassium, and downstream, again, can really affect blood sugar. It can also cause you to feel very weak and fatigue, and even like syncope. Again, why you do not just want to stop something cold turkey if you've been on it long term. There's also the risk of hypoglycemia, which is very, very low blood sugar, which can also be life-threatening. You could feel shaky, confused, sweating, could also potentially have nausea and vomiting, as well as weight loss, definitely appetite changes. A lot of people lose a lot of weight in topical steroid withdrawal because of this lack of cortisol. Now, cortisol also regulates your inflammation. So when we don't have enough cortisol, that's another factor in how inflamed that you start to get, how puffy and swollen from those imbalances in sodium and potassium. A lot of people blow up and start to get extremely red and extremely inflamed. And also because steroids cause vasoconstriction of the blood vessels, what happens is when we have the rebound effect from stopping synthetic cortisol or synthetic or the steroids, we're going to have this massive vasodilation. So everything just opens up. And this is why we get that oozing sensation, which is probably the worst part of it. Since now we have this really unstable vascular system, the blood vessels, we can have this major dilation and then increase a lot of blood flow, which is going to cause that fluid or plasma leakage. And the oozing, again, makes you feel just so sticky and so gross, but you also cannot shower because most people cannot tolerate water. Some people are opposite and they really love the bath. It helps them to feel a lot better. But for me personally, I was opposite of that. The thought of touching water made me want to throw up. So again, even though there's these common threads, everybody is different. And each phase of topical steroid withdrawal or steroid withdrawal is going to be different. So in one phase, you might love sitting in the bath. It may feel very soothing, especially a magnesium salt bath, where in another phase, it might feel like torture. And so then the next big symptom, of course, is going to be that crazy temperature dysregulation, that burning hot red skin because of that vasodilation and the increased blood flow to the skin. You know, our body's really smart. It knows like we need to start to heal and repair this area. And inflammation, if you think like when I get a cut, what happens? It becomes red and inflamed and swollen, and my body heals it. So all of that healing inflammation is coming straight to the skin. But then also we've got this very damaged skin barrier, and our skin is literally our nervous system. We rely on our skin for sensory information. And so internally, we feel freezing cold while externally the skin is burning hot. Steroids also affect the autonomic nervous system, which controls those involuntary bodily functions that include temperature regulation. So you're going to get the sweats, the chills, and crazy temperature swings. And then lastly, of course, is this really disrupted skin barrier, this completely damaged and wrecked skin barrier, which is going to make your skin less or more vulnerable to infections and things getting into the skin. So we have to be really, really careful to make sure that we, even though it's might feel like torture to bathe, that we're taking care of that skin barrier a little bit to make sure that we don't get these extra infections. So certain types of skin infections like staph or eczema herpeticulum are common in topical steroid withdrawal because our skin doesn't have that microbiome of bacteria, yeast, fungi, and it does not have the pH to fight off those types of pathogens. And the skin, just like the gut, needs to be very acidic. And without that acidity, we have more chance of these pathogens overgrowing. Now, let's get to solutions. So we know that we're going to go through these symptoms and these phases. And I believe that there is only so much you can do in the beginning to just maintain comfortability. There's not a lot that's going to prevent you from really experiencing these symptoms. And as much as I didn't think I was going to, because it was only like less than 2 weeks of prednisone, I still went through them in a massive way. And it wasn't until really like 3 months in where it continued to get worse and worse and worse until at about 3 months, I was just mentally completely done. I had already gotten into health coaching and I had graduated from my second master's degree in functional medicine in the end of 2019. And I was getting sick at the end of 2019 with mold illness and developing mast cell activation. And so by the end of 2020, when I had taken the prednisone, the reason I took the prednisone was because I had been dealing with mold illness and I did have rashes all over my entire body that were spreading and getting worse by the month. And I was going to do a treatment called low dose immunotherapy. Now, I looked at all of the research. The research that was done by Dr. Ty Vincent, the doctor that I found was trained by Dr. Ty Vincent. There were so many amazing testimonials of low dose immunotherapy. Prior to that, it was called low dose antigen therapy. And it used to be an injection, but the one that I was going to do was almost like homeopathy. It was just a little bit of liquid under the tongue. And the reason I wanted to do it was because of the mast cell activation. And you could really retrain your immune system for not overreacting to all sorts of different things in the environment, externally and internally. So with low dose immunotherapy, I was going to do the environment, I was going to do food, Lyme disease, molds and yeast, the herpes virus categories. I was also going to do the common skin pathogens and things that disrupt the skin. And I believe one more. Oh, I also sent in a stool sample and I was going to redo my entire gut. And so I had this plan. However, the doctor that I was going to see, and even Dr. Ty Vincent's research said, if someone has really extreme reactions or severe eczema, it is best to give them prednisone before they do the first round or during the first round, and maybe even the second round. And so my doctor recommended it. The original work on low-dose immunotherapy recommended it. Another doctor recommended it. I'd also gone to a dermatologist who recommended it, of course, but the dermatologist had taken a biopsy and said, nope, it's not fungal, it's not infected, it's allergic. Everything on your skin is related to allergies. And I was like, all right, this confirms it. And so I took it. Now, because I went into topical steroid withdrawal while I started this low dose immunotherapy, I really didn't notice any difference at all. As you can imagine, I was getting worse by the second. And the doctor, of course, felt really horrible and said no one had ever reacted like that before. And I was like, of course. But spiritually, what I believe had happened is maybe not only, like I mentioned before, I was already very stressed and dealing with mast cell, but I did not want to take the prednisone. I thought in my head, this is not resonating. My body doesn't feel good about it. I just want to do the low dose immunotherapy. I'm so tired of everyone trying to tell me that I don't know what I'm doing, that all of my natural things that I've tried have just made me worse, and I need to just suck it up, see a real doctor, take real medicine. And so subconsciously, I thought, I will show you guys. I will show you how evil medicine is. I will show you that I shouldn't have done this. And I didn't consciously think that, but looking back, I believe that that's what happened. So if you do decide at any moment that is the right time to take any sort of intervention, whether it's a medication or a supplement or any other type of intervention, you really need to do some digging on what your subconscious beliefs are that are going to happen. And if you feel like everyone's telling me to do this, but I don't want to, don't do it. Just from that personal experience. If you have this subconscious program that all of Western medicine is bad and taking this is going to make me worse, but I'm going to take it anyways because, you know, XYZ, probably don't do it. You want to really send this message to your body that whatever I put into it is going to be helpful for me, and it is going to assure that I reach my best health, even if it's a Western medicine. Now, in those beginning months, you really want to do things that help your mental health and your comfortability. So I had to sleep on a towel wrapped up in the bandages all around the parts of me that were oozing. You want to stock up on those types of bandages or towels or something that you can put over your skin that can be removed and just thrown away. Wearing clothes is going to feel horrible at times. Sitting in chairs, like leaning backwards in a chair, leaning on the couch. I literally had to sit as straight up as I possibly could and try to watch TV. Or luckily, I worked from home and I did have a job where I was just on the phone all day. So I was able to work without people knowing what was going on. And because every second of those beginning months was literal torture, pain, and suffering, it was hard to do anything that wasn't directly taking my mind off of it. So I could work and I could try to watch TV and I could try to function a little bit. But the more I sat in silence and stillness, what was very painful and difficult. And it was during this time where I realized that I needed things like brain retraining and a lot of nervous system support. And I needed to do massive trauma work on this because I was thinking about my skin 100% of the time, even when I was trying to work or watch TV. And I realized I am thinking about the problem all day, 100% of the time. And your mind is just spinning, trying to figure out, how can I feel better? What can I do to stop this? What can I take? Who could I see? What do I have to pay? Like, I will do anything to get out of this torture. And it was in this time also where trigger warning, but I did realize and I did understand why people had them, because that kind of pain and suffering is so intolerable. And when nothing works, there's no medication you can take, even you can't even sleep. You really can't do anything but be in pain and feel discomfort. Like, your body in topical steroid withdrawal does not know what comfort is. There is no comfort mentally, physically at all during this time period. And we can only take so much of that stress. And this is very common for people dealing with not just topical steroid withdrawal, but other chronic illnesses, because of that intolerable pain. So make sure that you have support and you're not alone. And even if it's embarrassing, like for me, it was like, I'm a health coach. What am I doing? Even if it feels difficult to ask, you really need to have support, friends, family around you to help you, because you're physically not going to be able to do that. But you also need like the topical steroid withdrawal community, or some community of people that know what you're going through and can support you in these really difficult and often really dark times. So comfort in the beginning stages. You're also going to want maybe ice packs. For me, the only thing that took away that bone deep itch, which I didn't even mention the itching part in the beginning part of this podcast. The itch is nonstop, relentless, into the bone. They call it a bone deep itch. And the only thing that would help with my itch was the hair dryer. And so I would literally sit and work with the hair dryer next to me. And anytime I had an itch, because your skin is so fragile in those beginning months, you can't just go itching. It's just, everything's going to melt off and you're going to have a big wound. And it's just even worse, because healing that wound also will cause more itching. So you want to get, in my opinion, the hair dryer was better than anything, because you just blow dried it on the itch and it heats it up to the point where all of a sudden the itch is gone. I don't know the exact science behind this, but obviously it has to do with the nerve. I mean, our nerves are trying to get our attention with the itch, like something is there, or, something is wrong. And with the hair dryer, for some reason, it takes it away temporarily, of course, but longer than anything else, way longer than anything else. You're also going to want fake nails, the acrylics that are very thick, so that you can actually itch, because you're not ever going to be perfect and you will always itch, even especially at night. And if you itch and you touch that skin, it's so fragile that it can make a big wound. And then the other thing is the zinc oxide paste. I did not use anything on my skin at all except for zinc oxide paste, which I was buying off of Etsy from, I think it's called the Home Herbalist or something like that. I had a big pot of it and I got 3 of them. And I believe I used an entire pot during topical steroid withdrawal, and I still have 1.5 left. So it lasted a really long time. At one point I would slather it all over my face. It's very white, so it doesn't rub in. You don't really want it to, but it is the most soothing thing that you can do when your skin is super damaged like that. You can put it over oozing skin, itching skin, dry, flaky skin. Whenever I would have like a big crack, I had a lot of cracking and open oozing wounds around my eyes, and my lips were the absolute worst, because I had actually used Protopic on my lips and around my eyes for all of 2020 almost, because I was told that it was not steroids. And so therefore there was no withdrawal. However, it was probably a worse withdrawal, because I'm still dealing with the lip cracking and dryness 4 years later. And then also, to be comfortable, you might want to get one of those chili pads to sleep on at night too. But because I was also freezing, my skin was burning, but my internal state was freezing. I would use the chili pad until I became too cold, and then I would turn a personal heating pad on and sleep with the heating pad. Probably not fire safe, not medical advice, but that's what I would do. I would literally have a heating pad on me at all times. Now, because I was so miserable during the first part of topical steroid withdrawal and I was losing weight, I was really eating whatever I wanted for one of the first times in my life, probably. I was eating ice cream. I would eat pizza. I mean, I never, ever have eaten like that. But because it was almost the only thing that brought me any sort of comfort or joy, I was like, I don't care. I kind of give up. This is going to happen whether I like it or not. It probably is going to happen whether I eat healthy or not. And, remember prior to this, I had MCAS. So I was already, whittling down to a few foods to try and stop the rashes from spreading. And it absolutely didn't help. The restriction didn't do anything for my skin. So I was like, screw it. I'm going to eat whatever I want. However, after about March was when I really mentally, emotionally lost it. So 3 months in, and I contacted my doctor. I got on mast cell stabilizing drugs, and I also got something for sleep. I took ketotifen, which is not only an H1 antihistamine, it's also a mast cell stabilizer. So it works on 2 different aspects, and it's not as drowsy inducing like some of the over-the-counter medications. Now, that's not the only medication out there. You want to obviously talk to the doctor that you're seeing. And even though you're probably really scarred with doctors, you're going to need one that is at least going to be there for you to give you some sort of medication if the emergency arises. So this was the doctor that I had that did low dose immunotherapy, and she was an MD/ND. And so she took one look at me and said, oh, yes, well, here you go. Take whatever you want. So we did ketotifen. And then because I really wasn't sleeping, I also did a benzodiazepine. This is something that I thought a lot about because there's a very high addiction in benzos. And I do have a history of drug and alcohol abuse. I have a very strong family history of alcohol abuse. And so I was, thought long and hard about it and decided to go with it because I was struggling so badly, and took, I would say, 0.5 to 2.5 milligrams of Xanax at night only. The doctor, of course, was like, you need this in the day. Like, you need this in the morning. And of course, I was like, no, absolutely not. I know what taking this too often will do. So I would do ketotifen in the morning, Benadryl at night with 0.25 to 0.5 milligrams of Xanax. And then after about 3 months of that, that had really helped. And I already started tapering off of it. So it was very, very short term. I also did decide to try Dupixent at this time. And within about a month, the skin that was just so wrecked looked a lot better. But after about 3 doses of Dupixent, and Dupixent is a biologic that blocks the IL-4 and IL-13 pathways. IL-4 is an inflammatory cytokine that is involved in the Th2 activation of our immune system. So basically involved in allergens and responding to allergens. And then IL-13 is the inflammatory cytokine that causes an itch. Now, again, about a month in, maybe 3 doses in, the skin looked a little bit better. It didn't look as damaged. However, I did start to get some side effects from Dupixent. There are some pretty intense side effects of it, like eye issues. I felt like my skin was also developing like the facial and neck fungal flares from it. And so I tapered off of that. I maybe used it a total of like 3 to 4 months, and just was like praying to God that steroid withdrawal, that was the 3rd month, did not come back. And of course it did, but not to the point where I was at in month 3. During this time period, I also woke up and said, eating ice cream at night is not going to get me healed quicker. And so not only did I start all of these medications at the same time, but I also started the carnivore diet. Now, again, I had already done tons of the very restrictive diets when I was in Mast Cell, because I was just so inflamed reacting to everything. Same with topical steroid withdrawal. If you were in topical steroid withdrawal, you can pretty much treat this like mast cell activation. It's very commonly spoken about that IgE responses skyrocket in topical steroid withdrawal, which are those allergy reactions. And so, you know, what is that? That is mast cell activation. You are responding to more innocuous things that are harmless in an allergic response that may even be life-threatening in certain situations. So carnivore diet removed even the few things that I was eating prior that I had no idea might be related to inflammation, like lettuce, squash, you know, just certain types of vegetables, potatoes, you know, things that I didn't ever have reactions to before. And my plan was to do 3 to 6 months of carnivore diet. And around month 4, I felt like I had improved so much, probably from actually sleeping at night. I'd already tapered off the Dupixent, and then also from just eliminating vegetables for the most part. I did still do some lemon water in the morning, which was giving me a little bit extra vitamin C. And during this whole time, I was also using bioenergetics to see how I could support my adrenals. So I mentioned earlier that you absolutely need adrenal support. That is a no-brainer, and that is we have to do this type thing. So adrenal support comes in all different forms. It could be electrolytes, it could be glandulars, it could be B vitamins, it could be herbs like ashwagandha or licorice. And I'm not going to be able to know which ones are going to be supportive for you without some testing, because even though, again, people in topical steroid withdrawal have these overlapping symptoms, not everyone is going to do good with, say, ashwagandha. A lot of people don't do good with ashwagandha at all. A lot of people have negative reactions to ashwagandha. Curcumin, there are certain genetic factors that can impact how well you respond to curcumin, which is generally looked at as like a really good anti-inflammatory herb. And it can cause issues in people. Licorice, same thing. Electrolytes are generally a more safe option, but is that going to be the only thing that supports your adrenals? Probably not. I've always had really great success with glandulars, but through testing, we will be able to know how does your adrenals need support. Homeopathy is really great in these beginning months also, because it helps to just gently nudge your body to start to work and go in the right direction. And homeopathy is a lot more well tolerated than other types of interventions, simply because in topical steroid withdrawal and mast cell, you know, you're reacting to lots of things. So even though an herb might be great for the adrenals, it might be an adaptogen. I'm a huge fan of reishi. Reishi really has helped me in a lot of different situations, but is it the right one for you in the moment? We won't know unless we do testing. Now, I use bioenergetics, which tests for not just adrenal support, but it's going to test the entire body as a whole, every organ, every system. It's going to tell you what nutrients and hormones you're low in. And then it's also going to tell you which toxins or pathogens are the most stressful for you now. Also emotional blocks, which is a personal favorite, and nervous system stress. But then it's also going to tell you food and environmental sensitivities, as well as create a personalized remedy protocol for you that's based on your stress levels, your priority, your height, your weight, your age, etc. So that is always where I start people. I also really love the hair tissue mineral analysis, or HTMA, because that's going to be a deep dive into your minerals. So we know what electrolytes are imbalanced, and do we need something like a glandular? Do we need an adrenal thyroid glandular, or do we need B vitamins, etc.? Those are my two favorites. Blood work, I like to use it to watch the changes. Like, for example, on my blood work, when I was in topical steroid withdrawal, my eosinophils, which are the white blood cells involved in mast cell degranulations, went up, skyrocketed to 28, and they should not be above a 3. And that was probably, I think I saw one more person in my practice in the last 4 years that had eosinophils higher than that at like 31. So that is very, very high. And that, again, is a representation of how we are reacting to our environment, how inflamed we are, how much allergic responses we're having. But that's also a marker for parasites, because that same white blood cell helps to kill parasites too. Now, let's talk about supporting the blood vessels and vasodilation. So one of the great things that I did to help with that vasodilation of the blood vessels is something called methylene blue. And I have this one right here. It's from Lifeblood. And this one is in a dropper form, so it's really easily dosed. I have another one from Troscriptions is the company, and it is a troche, which you basically put the little piece of blue into the mouth and you let it sit here and dissolve. And either one is fine. They both dye your mouth blue. Methylene blue is a literal dye. And it was discovered for its treatment of malaria. So that is a type of parasite, and the parasite Babesia is very similar to malaria. Methylene blue is also oftentimes used for Lyme and co-infections. But basically how it works is it inhibits nitric oxide synthesis and helps to constrict the blood vessels. So it's not something we want to do every day of our lives. We need this nitric oxide to do lots of other things for our body. But when you're so vasodilated, it can be really helpful. Now, there are lots of other things that can help with modulating nitric oxide that are not inhibiting it, which I would also recommend during this time. And number one, getting lots of polyphenols and antioxidants in the diet. So fruits, if you're going to do carnivore diet, some fruits would be helpful. Like I did some citrus in the morning, but citrus can be a trigger for some people. So you just want to find out. Other polyphenols that a lot of people do well with are quercetin, which quercetin is nature's antihistamine. So that has double the effects. The zinc, quercetin is a zinc ionophore, and people that struggle with eczema to begin with oftentimes have very low zinc, if not a true zinc deficiency. I'm pretty sure I sure did looking at some of my lab markers. And then there's also green tea extract. The extract that does not have caffeine is great for nitric oxide modulation. It's also an anti-inflammatory. It also helps with blood sugar stabilization and testosterone metabolism. And green tea helps with histamine as well. So I still to this day take green tea extract in every day in capsule form. Other things like grapeseed extract, L-arginine, curcumin from turmeric, omega-3 fatty acids, resveratrol, vitamin E, glutathione. These are all really common supplements that can help with either inflammation, nitric oxide balance and modulation, or as an antioxidant, and support also just basic functioning of the body and our cells and rebuilding the skin. Now, lastly, what I wish that I had during these early months of topical steroid withdrawal during this first year is something that I recently purchased. It's been a little over 2 months now that I've been using it, and that is a molecular hydrogen machine. Now, molecular hydrogen is a selective antioxidant. So basically what that means is, unlike something like vitamin C or vitamin E, which are just antioxidants, we can overdo antioxidants. We actually need a good balance of oxidative stress and antioxidants. And in studies, when they have given rats, for example, too much antioxidants, they actually have more issues. So almost just like everything, there's a bell curve, and all of science. Too little does nothing. Medium amounts are what gives you the benefit. And then too much is also worse and might give you reactions or be causing different symptoms. So with molecular hydrogen, it does not do that. It's a selective antioxidant and you cannot overdo it. It will not push you too far into too many antioxidants. The other great thing about molecular hydrogen is its massive anti-inflammatory effects. It is the smallest element on our periodic table, and so it can actually get into places like inside the cell that something like vitamin C or E or selenium cannot get into because it's so much smaller. So if like vitamin C is, this big, and molecular hydrogen is a teeny, teeny little dot. So that's another benefit. Molecular hydrogen also protects the cells from cellular damage. It also improves skin barrier function. It is really well studied for anti-aging and literally rebuilding and repairing the skin and the cells of the skin. It also has an immune modulation aspect to it and can help with preventing that overreaction to allergies. It also has neuroprotective effects, which can help protect from that excess inflammation and the damage maybe from doing something like topical steroid withdrawal or doing something like synthetic cortisol, and any sort of brain inflammation that might be happening. And then, of course, the mental health aspect of lowering brain inflammation, which can help with depression, anxiety, etc. Molecular hydrogen also helps with autophagy, which is this like cellular cleanup that our body does. And it also helps with modulating nitric oxide. So you can see if I went back in time and stopped and, saw how much money I was going to spend on gadgets and knew how impactful molecular hydrogen could be and has been for me recently, I would have gotten that in a heartbeat instead of all the other things that I got in the meantime. I mean, I bought PEMF mats, which of course can be helpful, 4 different frequency devices, which of course can be helpful. But did I see improvement? No. Did it get me out of steroid withdrawal? No. Did it make me feel a little bit better? Like I was proactively trying to do something? Yes, in the moment. And I could go on. I probably bought so many other things. And of course, supplements. I was still in this like impulse. I have to do something about this. I have to figure this out drive. Now, around this time also when I started to see a little bit of improvement, this was also when I felt like I could actually go into nervous system regulation and the trauma work. In the moments where I could barely function or think or move, it was insulting to think that I could have done some of this stuff because you're unable to think about anything else. Now, I did try some passive things first, which if you're in that time period where you're just like, there's no way I could do, a somatic exercise right now, or I literally turn on a meditation and I cannot even listen to it. If you're in that, I can barely do anything for my nervous system phase, please look into the things like I rented a neural optimal machine or neuroptimal. You can find a therapist or somebody that has this machine in your community if you contact them. But I rented it for a month because pricing wise, even though it was expensive to rent the machine for a month, it felt like it made more sense. And I think it was around $1,000 to rent that machine, but it was completely passive. It's not neurofeedback as traditional neurofeedback is. You're just hooking up electrodes to the brain and watching and listening to something on a laptop. And it really helped calm down my overreactive nervous system. Like I could watch TV and not feel so jumpy in a fight scene. When the alarm went off in my laundry, I didn't have a panic attack. And so I would highly recommend the Neuroptimal machine. It is not inducing a calm state. So there's some people who get so sensitive that doing anything that induces relaxation actually can trigger them, because their nervous system considers relaxation dangerous because we're vulnerable. And so you're on such high alert that even doing something that's relaxing can, trigger an immune response. So Neuroptimal does not try to get you relaxed. What it does is gives your brain the feedback to help balance whatever is going on with your brain. It's not like one program that everybody gets. So then the second thing that I really loved during this time period was the Brain Tap machine. Brain Tap is a headset that you can put on that uses binaural beats and lights and like a voice meditation that helps to balance the sides of your brain, and again can really help with trauma and limbic system rewiring. Again, during this time period, I was like, there's no way I can do a program. I can barely think. So this was very passive. You just listen and lights flash and there's tones and sounds. But then once I was able to really like, okay, I'm not going downhill still. I feel like I have a little bit of stability. That's when I stopped doing any sort of crazy interventions. I stopped trying to find like hyperbaric oxygen chambers and things like that. And I really decided to just do carnivore diet, and I stopped any sort of like supplements that weren't very simple, like adrenal support and things like that. And during this time is when I discovered the Primal Trust program, which is my absolute favorite nervous system, emotional healing, transformation program out there. I have a podcast with Dr. Kat. It is episode 7. And it's definitely one of my most popular and most talked about. At least people will DM me and talk about it, how much they loved it. So I highly recommend it in that program. I do have a link for all these things that I just mentioned, including that program that I will include in the show notes. But it is brain retraining, it is somatic work, it is vagal toning, it is trauma work, nervous system regulation, you name it. She has everything in that program, and it's a monthly membership. So if you try it and cannot still physically do it, or you're having trouble with it, you can always cancel it. They do also offer coaching on the site from people who are, licensed professionals. And I did it twice, the first program, and then the second one she did. She's probably changed it a lot since I have done it, but I still absolutely love it and recommend it. There's also a couple other programs for brain retraining or transformation that I have had on my podcast, at least the people who created them. And I have not gone through all of them, but they are all still fantastic if Primal Trust doesn't resonate with you. One of them is Reorigin. One of them is ANS Rewire. And I also have a program that I created after this called How to Feel. And I'm rebranding it. It's going to be called next Feel to Heal, Transforming Triggers into Calm. And in my program, it is teaching you what I call my 5-step process, which is a combination of somatic awareness, some neuroscience techniques, self-soothing techniques, manifestation techniques, and they're all grouped together in a process in 5 steps that helps you to rewire and desensitize your nervous system's reaction to a memory, a trigger, a stressor, a sensation, a belief system. You can really start with anything that you want to process or that's bothering you or is uncomfortable. And the process is something that helps with kind of like with how EMDR works, where you are desensitizing your reaction to something. So you can use this from a topical steroid withdrawal point of view for things like food or a memory or the trauma of topical steroid withdrawal. And you can do it yourself. And also in that program, it goes deeper into like how our brains work and why we're like this and why we, feel victimized or why we continue to tell the story of our identity and why it's so hard to change. That's a really big one. Why is it so hard to change? Like myself, my emotions. I have all this awareness for why this happened to me. I have all this awareness of what led me to getting so sick, but how do I climb out of it? Like I already was a therapist. I already had a master's in mental health counseling and in functional medicine, and this still happened to me. So why, so that program goes into all of that, like not only the reasoning behind how our brain works and our body works, but also how do we climb out of this? How do we start to peel back the layers of how we think and how we behave and who we are to then recreate our reality? And there's so many big gurus that teach this kind of stuff, but I've never come across anyone that teaches the 5-step process that I use. So this is also what I use in my one-on-one. And I started to combine all of these different certifications and trainings that I had done and gather more certifications. I did a German New Medicine program and a somatic program and an EMDR program. And gosh, what else do I have? So many different things that allowed me to create this 5-step process where I pieced together the best parts of each and every modality, or at least the things that I thought were the most important and the most helpful. Now, once you are out of the really severe steroid withdrawal where you literally cannot function, like 2022, I was feeling pretty good. My skin actually looked better in 2022 than it did in 2023. However, was still dealing with flares and the dryness in certain. I had very specific patches like this neck part, the chin, and my mouth were the last places to heal. And then I also still had fungal type rashes all around my neck up until recently when I started using the molecular hydrogen. And I got a new skincare product, which I'm not going to talk about just yet. But once you're really out of the woods and you can like shower or take a bath again, and you feel like, okay, there's a little bit of stability, or if you did choose to do something like Dupixent or another biologic or another like cromolyn sodium's another mast cell stabilizing medication a lot of people take, and you're starting to feel like, okay, I don't feel like I'm absolutely insane. I look a little bit better than I did before. That's when I would recommend doing some of that root cause testing, because there's no roadmap for, first of all, why were you using steroids? So you already had some imbalances, infections. You're probably already in some hormonal imbalances, mitochondria dysfunction, cell membrane permeability, or calcification, or Th2 dominance. I mean, there's obviously a reason that you use steroids to begin with, autoimmunity, whatever was going on. Once the TSW is more stable, you're going to start to chip away at the root causes of, why you were using them in the first place, but also recovering from the steroid withdrawal. The type of testing that I use, the bioenergetics, the HTMA, they are whole body approach, cellular approach, energetic body approaches, and they're not like doing a GI map where you're only going to see, I've got gut dysbiosis, which I can tell you right now, you do. It's not like doing a mycotoxin panel where you're like, oh, well, maybe this mold is current, or Maybe this mold's coming from the house you lived in 5 years ago. It's not like doing even an oat test, which is going to say, oh, we do have some mold overgrowth. We do need some B vitamins. We do have mitochondria issues, which gives you more information. But the two types of testing that I use, in my opinion, give you the entire picture. And that is what you want when you're recovering from a debilitating condition like this. And so you're going to start to chip away. You're going to start to maybe introduce more foods, maybe come off of the really restrictive diet if that's tolerable for you. You're going to really, really want to start to go outside. Now, this is something that is really hard for people when their skin is so broken like that. I couldn't go outside just because it hurt. It hurt. It was so painful. And I will never forget the first walk I went on. When I finally could go on a walk, I was still wearing a giant sweatshirt in Miami where it's hot AF all of the time, and sweatpants or yoga pants. And I was still probably covering up my face to some degree, but I was crying. I was so happy that I was outside. The sun is going to heal your skin. Now, if it's still painful, you only want to go outside or open your window to get light in your eyes. If you can do this when you're at your worst, this is going to help you heal better because light regulates cortisol and darkness regulates melatonin, both of which are anti-inflammatory if they are balanced. If they are crazy imbalanced, because for me, I was working all day on computers. I couldn't go outside. And at that time period, we were even having paneling done on our apartment building, and they walled off our balcony. So I couldn't even open the window. And I still was able to heal within a reasonable amount of time. But anyways, you want to go outside, sunrise, midday, sunset, and then blue blocker glasses, or turn off the lights and use candlelight or full spectrum bulbs, which I get at a company called Bond Charge. They're amazing. I'll never use any other type of light bulbs. That changed depending on the time of day, because the light signaling from the sun is going to regulate your cortisol. It's going to tell your body what time of day it is. And darkness helps you to produce melatonin, which helps you to sleep, but it's also anti-inflammatory and helps with mitochondria functioning. For me, when I could finally go outside, I would go down to the pool deck and I'd sit there for 10 minutes, 5 minutes. I'd go in the shade, I'd come out, and I would just let that crispy skin just like bake, hoping that no one in their bikinis getting in the pool saw me, because I still couldn't touch water at the time I was doing this. But I would just try to go down there for 5 to 10 minutes in the morning, midday, and at sunset. And I think that made a huge difference as well. Now, you're also going to want to touch the earth. The process of making energy from the food that we eat is called the electron transport chain. And we gather electrons from the food that we eat, but also from light and also from the earth. So if you can touch your feet on the earth, take your socks off or whatnot. If your feet are, not broken skin or oozing or anything like that, try and be as close to nature as you possibly can. If you live close to a beach and you can tolerate water, get in the ocean. As long as it's, not algae season or there's no warning. Sometimes there is in Miami. That salt water is also going to be incredibly healing for the skin. And fun fact about our body, our blood concentration is very similar, if not the exact same, as the salt concentration of the ocean. And floating in that salt water is so relaxing to our nervous system because it's almost like we're floating in the womb again. That is from the perspective of German New Medicine. And I do a meditation a lot of times with clients where we end floating in the ocean. And then as we come out, we decide like what our life is going to look like. And it's almost like a rebirth. So if you live close to salt water, highly recommend if you can get in the water. It might burn when you leave the ocean for a bit, but just trust me, just let it burn for a little bit and it'll start to feel better. And then one of the other really impactful interventions that I did was a peptide. Well, I did several peptides. The first one is called KPV. It is a tripeptide. It's only 3 amino acids joined together by peptide bonds, lysine, proline, and valine. And the crazy amazing thing that KPV does is it's a mast cell stabilizer. And it also helps really well with histamine issues, which is going to decrease the itching and the redness. And it's also great for inflammation, especially if it's caused by candida or gut issues, which again, if you're in steroid withdrawal, you definitely have gut issues. You definitely have leaky gut and candida and bacteria overgrowth. Simply because steroids and cortisol play a huge role with our gut lining. And if we've got this really high cortisol for long periods of time and really long periods of stress and nervous system issues where we're just in sympathetic dominance and not going into parasympathetic, our gut lining is going to break down, and the gut acidity and microbiome balance and fungal balance is going to be disrupted. So in TSW and mast cell, you definitely have this. Lots of research on KPV also with IBS and IBD disorders like Crohn's and colitis. So really significant impact on gut health, but then also the mast cell stabilization piece. It's generally really well tolerated. It comes in a capsule form, which I would do if I was super sensitive and very reactive. I would try teeny little sprinkles of it. And then it also comes in an injectable form, which for me, the oral didn't really put a dent in my inflammation. Whereas the injectable, I really felt like it made a pretty big difference. It did not fully take away TSW, but I felt a lot more stable and I did not feel as itchy or inflamed. You should do typically around a 30 to 60 day protocol, or sorry, 30 up to 90 days. And I did around 60. It's pretty pricey. The injectable protocol is around $300 a month. But again, at that time, I would have done anything to help. Whereas the oral is around $150 for, I think, maybe like 60 pills. So depending on how fast you're going with the pills, will depend on how fast that runs out. Now you're going to want to know like how much do I dose, etc. You can find some of that information on the internet, but it's a little sketchy. So I also do peptide consults to go over things like that for educational purposes only, not for medical advice. And then my good friend who's been on my podcast a couple times, Lindsay, she also has a peptide course, which you can learn about all of them and the protocols and where to get and how to source, which I'll have linked in the show notes as well. And then there's a few other peptides that are really helpful, such as BPC 157. It stands for Body Protective Compound 157. And this helps to heal the gut. The oral form is really good at this. It does not get degraded in the stomach. And then also it helps to heal other damage. So like the skin. I also used a peptide serum on my face, which was very expensive. It was a copper peptide and BPC 157. I had my doctor at the time compound a lotion for me, which I didn't feel like was that great. But then I found the regenerative serum online, which I'll have linked below, that is one of my favorite things I've ever used on my skin. I started using that even when it was very dry. It's still pretty in recovery from topical steroid withdrawal. And that was really the only thing I used on my skin for maybe like a year, because BPC will help heal the skin. Copper peptides also help heal the skin and help with like wrinkles. And of course, I thought I was going to look 100 years old for the rest of my life at one point. In topical steroid withdrawal, you just have these deep, massive wrinkles and they're all gone. So there's hope. You won't have the deep wrinkle old lady look around your eyes. Even my neck has healed even better. And then also with peptides, there's a lot of immune modulating peptides. I also did thymosin alpha 1, which is really helpful for balancing the branches TH1 and TH2. Usually in topical steroid withdrawal and mast cell activation and histamine intolerance, you will have a Th2 dominance. And then it also has been used with a lot of inflammatory illnesses, even cancer. It is FDA approved, and it's really heavily researched and approved in other countries for a lot of different diseases, including tumor shrinking and cancer, and also used for chronic inflammatory response syndrome from mold illness or mycotoxin exposure. And those are the two really big ones that I did that really helped. I tried a few others. I didn't really notice a big difference. But then this year, which I'm at year 4, coming away from it, I've started trying quite a few other peptides for some other reasons. Not going to get into that now. I do listen to my other podcast with Lindsay on some of the most popular and well worth it peptides. And just to wrap things up, you know, everything that I've said here, I know that a lot of you guys are going to run out and try to get some of these things because you are literally trying to do anything that will help. But I cannot emphasize enough that you absolutely have got to really look inward and try and figure out what is best for me in this moment. Just because I did this or didn't do that does not mean it was correct. In fact, I'm pretty sure I did a lot of things wrong. I did the low dose immunotherapy for 2 years, and I really don't know if it helped me at all. I also did a technique you can find in the community, NAT. It stands for the doctor who who created it, and then allergy elimination technique. You can go to naet.com and find someone that works with this process close to you. It is a nervous system acupressure rebalancing technique, and I did 30 to 40 sessions of that. I don't know how much that helped me either, because it wasn't like I had a reaction to something, I did the technique, and then I didn't, because my symptoms were just chronic inflammation nonstop 100% of the time with no improvement. And I couldn't ever figure out what triggers were. I mean, I knew from my childhood, you know, and from getting sick from mold, maybe gluten, maybe dairy, maybe eggs at some point, definitely dust. But again, I couldn't tell a difference no matter what I did for the most part. Avoidance and elimination only gets you so far. You really want to eliminate and then do the things that help bring your body back into balance so that you can reintroduce these things, because the smaller your world gets with eliminations, the more hypersensitive you become and you have a harder time tolerating anything. The longer you stay in restriction, the more intolerant your body, your immune system is going to get. So through that lens of psychoneuroimmunology, our emotional health, our nervous system health is our immune system health. They both have the same goal, right? Am I in danger? Am I in a threat? Is this a threat, or am I safe? Is this okay? And so they work together. So only you are going to know if an intervention or a gadget or a supplement or a type of testing is going to be helpful for you. And some of the stuff that I have done probably made other people worse. And some of the stuff that other people did may have been helpful for me. I just didn't find it, or I didn't do it. And always kind of take things like how to heal things or this is what I did type posts with a grain of salt, because there's a lot of behind the scenes emotional work and lifestyle stuff that you may not be seeing. With the skin also, through the lens of German New Medicine, the skin is a separation conflict. And so during my time period of nervous system work and trauma work, I had to, and I still to this day do a lot of support, subconscious support, somatic support for those feelings of I'm different, I'm broken, nobody likes me, I can't fit in, I don't fit in, I can't connect to people. And just that feeling of separation. It wasn't necessarily that I was feeling separated from a person per se, although community is very important. And so when you are alone in isolation because of topical steroid withdrawal, feeling that loneliness, feeling that separation can definitely exacerbate it. But for me personally, I really felt that like I was separated from myself, and I also felt separated from other people and the community at large. And also during that deep inner work, I was also dealing with recovery from like severe binge drinking and partying for all of my 20s, even into my early 30s, and really didn't know how to connect with people, let alone myself. And so feeling that separation from even something like alcohol, or with topical steroids, feeling separated from the steroids or wanting to be separated from the steroids. It doesn't necessarily have to be a person with the skin. So there's all sorts of things that you can explore to figure out what's going to be best for me, and what's the route that I'm going to take to heal from this. And so I hope this was helpful for you guys. I really feel for and understand how horrific topical steroid withdrawal or steroid withdrawal is, and mast cell activation. And especially coming from someone who already had all of this formal education and even was seeing clients and seeing other people improve. I know firsthand just how much that really weighs on your self-esteem and your identity, and how well you're able to fit into society and function. So if you have any questions, you can always find me at Amanda Panacea on Instagram. And you can find my website, thehealerrevolution.com. And of course, I will have a lot of these resources in the show notes. And if you could give this a like and subscribe, this is all just free information, part of my passion project, part of using my voice and reconnecting with the community after such a traumatic illness. So I appreciate all of you and much love. I will talk to you soon. Thank you, everyone. I am just so thrilled that you're listening to the Healer Revolution podcast. This has been a huge passion project for me and super therapeutic on top of that, helping me to use my voice and connect with other like-minded individuals. So if you're enjoying the podcast, please like and subscribe. Please share on social media or with your audience or friends or loved ones. I truly appreciate it. It does take a lot of time and financial costs to run the podcast, and it is not a moneymaker, let me tell you. So if you are enjoying this, I would truly appreciate your support just by sending me a post, a like, and a subscribe. Thank you so much.